My name is Elise Monroe. I'm 32 years old, a freelance graphic designer based in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm the kind of person who replies to texts with full sentences, remembers how you like your coffee, and saves screenshots of old conversations in a folder called Warm Things. I believed love was about holding on, even when your fingers hurt. I stayed when the laughter stopped, when the dinners went quiet, when his eyes drifted over me like I was furniture. I thought love was choosing someone every day, even on the days they forgot to choose you. But the day Mason looked at me and said, "I just need some space," everything I knew about love collapsed. It didn't sound like goodbye, but it felt like it. And I waited and waited until something inside me snapped. Not loudly, but cleanly. So, I gave him what he wanted. Only, I made it permanent. If stories about quiet revenge and emotional awakening speak to you, hit that like, drop a comment, and subscribe. I promise this isn't about heartbreak, it's about rebirth. And sometimes, the loudest thing you can do is leave without slamming the door. The title, Boyfriend Said He Needed Space, so I Gave Him Eternity, is more than a sentence. It's a scalpel wrapped in silk. Sharp, elegant, and emotionally devastating. Its genius lies in its dual-tone delivery. The first half, "Boyfriend said he needed space," echoes a phrase so familiar it's become a cliché in modern relationships. It represents a soft, non-committal form of rejection, the kind that avoids confrontation while delivering pain. It's vague. It's non-violent. It keeps the door ajar without truly closing it. And that's why it stings. When someone says they need space, what they often mean is, "I want freedom without guilt," or "I'm preparing to leave without saying it directly." It's a phrase soaked in ambiguity, forcing the other person into emotional purgatory. But the second half of the title is where the blade turns. "So I gave him eternity." This line detonates quietly. It turns the cliché on its head with calm, haunting finality. The speaker doesn't argue, she doesn't protest, she grants the request, but not in the way the boyfriend expected. Instead of waiting around, she exits permanently. No words, no games, just disappearance. This inversion transforms the speaker from the one who was left behind into the one who left for good. And in doing so, it satisfies a deep collective longing within the audience, the fantasy of walking away without a trace. The silent revenge, the untold goodbye. The emotional punch of this title is amplified by the juxtaposition of two deceptively soft words, space and eternity. Space implies a pause, a gap, something temporary, but eternity is forever. This contrast is surgical. It paints the boyfriend as someone who wanted a break, maybe for selfish exploration, maybe for cowardly indecision. But what he received was a void that couldn't be filled. It evokes poetic justice not through conflict, but through calm finality. And that's where the viral potential lies. The revenge isn't loud, it's dignified, cold, beautiful. The story unfolds in 4 tightly woven acts, each layered with subtle emotional transitions and rising psychological stakes. Act 1 sets the stage with quiet intimacy. Elise and Mason's relationship is captured in delicate, everyday details, shared playlists on rainy Sundays, slurping instant ramen in oversized t-shirts, the kind of comfort that doesn't need explaining. Elise narrates that Mason once called her home, a word that made her heart settle. Their love feels lived in, not grand, but genuine. There's laughter, routines, small rituals that suggest long-term comfort. The audience is meant to feel like they know this couple, like they've been them. Act 2 introduces the slow fade. It's not a breakup, it's erosion. Mason misses Elise's birthday. He scrolls on his phone during date nights. Their talks become transactional. "How was work?" "Fine." Elise senses something slipping, but tells herself it's just stress, or that maybe she's asking for too much. Mason stops making eye contact when he says, "I love you." There's no fight, just distance, the kind that hurts more because it's quiet. Act 3 is the collapse. Mason says the dreaded words, "I need space." Elise, afraid of seeming needy or making it worse, agrees. Days pass, then weeks. He stops reaching out. Elise doesn't chase, But when her friend sends a photo of Mason on Instagram, smiling in Nashville, arms around a woman Elise has never seen, the betrayal becomes undeniable. But Elise doesn't spiral. She doesn't scream. Instead, she folds her clothes, books a one-way flight, and leaves a single note on the kitchen counter. "You wanted space. I gave you eternity." That's it. No fight, no closure, just absence. Act 4 shows Mason return to an empty apartment. No Elise, no goodbye, just her scent on the pillow and silence echoing in the rooms. He texts, he calls, no reply. Weeks later, a final message. "Why didn't you say goodbye?" Elise never answers. She's moved. She's healed. She didn't get closure from him. She gave it to herself. And that silence, it becomes Mason's punishment. Each act tightens the emotional grip, moving the viewer from comfort to tension, to heartbreak, to empowerment. It's not just a breakup story, it's a story of reclaiming power through absence. Elise's emotional arc begins with devotion. She's the kind of partner who believes love can outlast distance, silence, and temporary coldness. She sees Mason's detachment as stress, not rejection. When he pulls away, she pulls closer, cooking his favorite meals, laughing at half-hearted jokes, leaving kind notes. But as time passes, the cracks widen, her texts go unanswered. His hugs feel hollow. Elise shifts from loyalty to confusion, asking herself if love is supposed to feel this lonely. Still, she hopes. She believes in phases, in patience. But one evening, she receives a photo that shatters that belief. Mason, smiling in Nashville with another woman. Her heart doesn't break in an explosion. It fractures in silence. She doesn't scream. She doesn't call. She simply sits, letting truth settle in like dust. That moment marks the pivot, from confusion to clarity. Elise realizes she was never chosen, just tolerated. Her need to be loved turns inward. She stops waiting, stops hoping, stops performing emotional labor for someone who asked for space just to cheat freely. Instead of revenge, she chooses absence. She leaves a note, simple, final, and walks away. Her arc ends not in confrontation, but in calm. Elise becomes someone who understands that strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's leaving without needing an apology. It's knowing that closure is a door you can close yourself. She doesn't check his social media, doesn't answer his texts. She lets the silence speak, not as punishment, but as peace. In her stillness, she finds healing. She transforms from a woman who feared abandonment into one who chose herself. Elise's arc is about reclaiming dignity without explanation. She loved deeply and left completely. And in that, she becomes whole. The dialogue in this story isn't explosive. It's surgical. Mason starts with soft control saying, "I just need space. It's not you, I just need to think." On the surface, it sounds gentle, but underneath, it's a strategic ambiguity that shifts guilt away from him. Elise, desperate to preserve the relationship, doesn't challenge it, but her silence is not consent. It's confusion. As weeks pass, his silence grows louder than any argument. When she finally leaves, she writes only one sentence. "You wanted space. I gave you eternity." Her words mirror his, but hers cut deeper. They don't beg, accuse, or explain. They simply end things. Months later, Mason texts, "Why didn't you at least say goodbye?" But now, he's on the outside, wanting closure. Elise never responds aloud, but in her mind, she answers, "I did." But silence doesn't echo in empty hearts. The emotional power has flipped. Mason's vague exit is met with Elise's concrete disappearance. His uncertainty birthed her clarity. She doesn't need a loud scene to reclaim control, just a well-placed sentence and the resolve to never look back. In this dialogue dance, Elise wins not by speaking more, but by saying less and meaning it. This story's genius lies in its quiet cruelty. It invites the audience into a world where the protagonist never raises her voice, yet still delivers the ultimate emotional blow. Viewers aren't manipulated with dramatic cheating scenes or verbal warfare. Instead, they're guided through stillness, waiting, and restraint. Elise doesn't explode. She evaporates. That subversion of expected drama creates a psychological manipulation that feels both shocking and satisfying. The story is designed to make us root for Elise from the start. She's not a hero. She's not perfect, but she's human. And that's where the manipulation begins. She brings Mason lunch. She laughs at his jokes. She forgives. She stays. She's the woman many viewers see in themselves, the one who loves a little too patiently. That emotional mirroring makes the audience align with her, emotionally and morally. Then comes Mason. Not aggressive, not overtly toxic, but passive, indifferent, emotionally absent. And that ambiguity is a masterstroke. It doesn't give the audience a villain to hate. It gives them someone to doubt. That doubt breeds tension. Is he just stressed, or is he done emotionally? That tension turns into silent resentment, both for Elise and the audience. We wait with her. We feel the ignored messages, the missed calls, the lack of touch. When the betrayal finally comes, it's not shouted. It's shown. A photo, a location tag, a smile on someone else's face. It's personal, brutal, and understated. That visual betrayal feels more intimate than 1,000 arguments. And that's the trap. We expect reaction, fire, breakdown. But Elise walks. One note. No scene, no tears. And that's what manipulates us most. The story doesn't just offer poetic justice. It denies the audience the confrontation they crave. Instead, it feeds them grace. Elise's silence isn't weakness, it's warfare. Her lack of words becomes her loudest statement, and we admire her for it. Why? Because we've all wanted to do what she did. To exit cleanly. To say nothing. To leave someone wondering forever. The audience forgives her not because she's innocent, but because she's powerful in her restraint. Her quiet becomes aspirational. It turns ordinary heartbreak into myth. The use of moral gray areas elevates the emotional stakes. Mason didn't scream. He didn't cheat, initially at least, but his neglect hurt more than any insult could. That emotional starvation is what makes the audience feel justified in Elise's exit. Her pain doesn't need to be loud to be valid. That's the story's brilliance. It teaches us that not all pain needs an audience. The story also uses phrases and patterns that make viewers justify Elise's choices. You wanted space. I gave you eternity. That line doesn't just hit Mason, it hits us. It's a line people screenshot. Quote, remember. It feels like the kind of thing you say when you've truly let go. The pacing is also manipulated to create emotional weight. Long silences between action mirror Elise's internal silence. The audience doesn't just watch her break, they feel the slow crumbling. Then, in the final twist, when Mason texts, "Why didn't you at least say goodbye?" It's over. He's no longer in control. He's chasing a ghost. And that is deeply satisfying. Not because Elise hurt him, but because she didn't let him rewrite the ending. That's the ultimate manipulation, letting silence be the story's closure. No scenes, no second chances, just clean escape. The final message lingers. You don't owe closure to the person who caused your pain. You owe it to yourself. And that manipulation, emotional, moral, and narrative, is what makes this story unforgettable. This story is drenched in emotional symbolism, where everyday objects become silent witnesses to heartbreak. The cold side of the bed isn't just about sleeping arrangements. It becomes a metaphor for emotional abandonment, once shared warmth now replaced by void. Elise turns to that cold side night after night, hoping Mason might roll back toward her, but he never does. His absence becomes territorial. Their dinners, which once echoed with laughter and clinking glasses, shift into quiet standoffs. Two people chewing through silence. Even food becomes heavy with meaning. The shared ramen they once loved feels forced. Rituals turn to routines. And routines, when void of care, rot into resentment. One of the most painful symbols appears during Elise's birthday. A cake sits untouched, candles unlit. A party of one. It visually embodies how celebrations can quietly decay in relationships where affection becomes effortful. That image of sweetness going stale stays with the viewer long after the story ends. Mason's phone is a recurring prop, always face down, always buzzing quietly. It represents secrets, shame, and selective transparency. He never outright lies, but the truth lives in what's hidden. and his phone becomes the hiding place. Elise notices. She doesn't snoop. She absorbs. She records these details emotionally, storing them as invisible proof. The theme of space is the story's spine. Mason uses it as an emotional euphemism, a way to step back without stepping up. I need space sounds gentle, even responsible, but in this story, it's a coward's shield. He weaponizes ambiguity. In contrast, Elise flips the narrative. She grants him space, not in inches, but in eternity. And in doing so, she reframes space from escape to emancipation. The same word becomes the site of betrayal and of rebirth. Disappearance is perhaps the most powerful motif. Elise doesn't just leave, she vanishes with intention. She reroutes her mail, she blocks his number, she erases herself from digital memory. Her social media goes dark, no cryptic posts, no revenge selfies, just absence. And this absence is louder than any revenge plot. It symbolizes the emotional labor women often carry. Remembering birthdays, fixing silences, doing the work of holding love together. When Elise disappears, it's not an act of cruelty. It's a refusal to perform anymore. Her note, "You wanted space. I gave you eternity," isn't bitter. It's surgical. Each word slices clean. There's no need for paragraphs, no apology. Just a sentence that seals her exit with precision. The apartment itself becomes symbolic. What was once their shared home becomes a ghost house, her scent fading, her hair ties missing from the drawer. When Mason returns, it's sterile, empty. The echo of his own footsteps is the only company. The silence she leaves behind isn't accidental. It's curated. A silence that punishes not through noise, but through the absence of meaning. And this is what elevates the story thematically. It isn't about infidelity, it's about emotional subtraction. A love that bled out slowly, one ignored text at a time. Ultimately, the story's symbolic architecture tells us this: walking away doesn't need a storm. Sometimes it needs only stillness. Elise's choice not to explain, not to justify, not to scream, becomes the ultimate act of rebellion. In that rebellion, she doesn't just leave him, she finds herself. And that is what makes this story unforgettable. Not the betrayal, but the quiet, precise way she turns pain into power. Quick pause. If you've made it this far, thank you. Seriously. This story hits in that quiet spot most people never talk about. The silence after love, the unanswered questions, the slow withdrawal no one warns you about. We've all been there in some form, staring at a phone that won't light up, refreshing a message thread that stays frozen in time. And yet, here you are, walking through Elise's story like it's yours too. That's powerful. So while we're here together, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, let me know. What country are you watching from? And what time is it where you are right now? You'd be surprised how global heartbreak can be. Whether it's 2 a.m. in Toronto, sunrise in Mumbai, or midnight in London, these stories reach across oceans. And I read every single comment, not just the likes or the emojis. The real stuff, the names, the moments, the memories you trust me with, they matter. Also, let's try something together. If you've ever been left in silence, not with a goodbye, not even with an explanation, just a sudden stillness you had to fill with guesses. Drop away in the comments. A black moon, a symbol for the space they left behind, for the words they never gave you, for the closure they stole. Let's turn this section into a constellation of the unsaid, not to stay stuck in it, but to own it. Together. Because the truth is, silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's a scream in disguise. And sometimes, the way we take our power back is by speaking what they wouldn't. Maybe Elise's story isn't just hers. Maybe it's yours too. Or someone you once knew. Maybe it's that version of you that waited too long, loved too quietly, or left too late. But guess what? You're here now. You're the one watching, processing, healing, not them. All right, take a deep breath with me, because we're about to step back into Elise's world. And trust me, the best part is still coming. The part where silence doesn't haunt, it heals. And where absence isn't a punishment, it's a beginning. Let's finish this story together. Drop your country, drop your time, drop it if they disappeared without a word. Back to Elise, because the moment Mason realizes she's really gone, that's when the real echo begins. This story resonates so deeply because it quietly validates the unspoken desires many of us carry. To walk away with dignity, to never have to beg for answers, to leave without permission. It's not a fantasy about revenge through chaos. It's about power reclaimed through silence. Especially for women, the message is personal. Women are often taught to wait, to accommodate, to hope he'll come back better. Elise flips that script. She doesn't scream, she doesn't argue, she just leaves. And in doing so, she becomes a symbol for emotional closure that doesn't need male approval. The story says, if he could ignore your tears, you can ignore his confusion. You don't owe someone a graceful exit if they never offered you a safe place to stay. For men watching, it's a subtle mirror. Mason never raises his voice. He doesn't cheat in the traditional sense, but his emotional absence, his need for space, becomes a slow form of abandonment. The story shows that indecision can hurt just as much as betrayal. That vague goodbyes still leave real scars, and when someone disappears because you couldn't decide, you don't get to be surprised. For everyone, it delivers emotional justice in the most elegant way. No fights, no final scenes, just one suitcase, one note, and one woman choosing herself. That's what makes the story viral. Not its drama, but its grace. It tells the audience, you can be hurt and still walk out with your pride intact. You can lose someone and still keep your soul. You can exit quietly and leave a louder impact than any argument ever could. The subtext isn't about revenge. It's about return to self-worth, to boundaries, to peace. Elise doesn't destroy Mason. She just becomes unreachable. And that, in today's world, is power.